Russ, welcome to another Get Schooled. Obviously, it's Get Schooled by Russ. How you doing, Russ?
Doing fine.
Okay. Okay. So today, Russ, I want to talk about Perique.
Sure.
Okay. It's Perique. You know, like ooh Perique, ooh Perique. Is there a reason for that? For ooh Perique?
Well, yeah, it's a unique plant and a unique process for turning it into what we use as perique.
And
So,
they call it the truffle of tobaccos. Would you agree with that?
yeah. Truffles in cooking have a strong umami flavor,
Absolutely.
and it's also very easy to overdo truffles.
I get you.
I mean, one of the worst things that I've ever eaten was when somebody cooked a meal and they used too much truffle oil. It just absolutely ruined the flavor.
Oh God.
It is a very strong flavor. It would be like using too much soy sauce or too much Worcestershire sauce.
It's a fine
Uh,
line.
so yeah, I think that's a fair comparison.
Now, when someone is curious about Perique, what in a blend that has Perique? Now, obviously, the percentage of Perique will give you a stronger smell. I'm assuming, right?
Well, yeah, it'll be a more assertive flavor. Yeah.
Well, I'm talking actual tin note.
Oh, tin note. Yeah, tin note. Well, it's a heavily fermented tobacco.
So, when you say heavily fermented, I keep thinking of wine grapes, vinegary, very nosy, very high notes.
Um, I would actually say it's more like kimchi
Oh, really?
in that regard. In terms of fermentation, it becomes funky.
I see. Okay.
You might notice a little bit of ammonia. Um, if if the tobacco didn't have time to air out properly, because ammonia with fermentation of tobacco is a side product.
Okay, and you have to air out the Perique before you actually tin it.
You should, yes.
And
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you which blends we could smell the ammonia in, but would it be obvious if we opened up a tin and we had the Perique was not aired out? Would we smell that instantly?
It would probably be more of a background note. It's not going to be prominent.
And so, what am I? What are the scents? What are the flavors in Perique? What am I smelling?
That's an interesting thing because I did a series of tobaccos with an experiment that Mark Ryan did at LA Poche. Um, one year, he took tobacco from each of the four regions of the Golden Triangle, which is where Perique is grown.
Okay, which when you say the four regions, can you name them? I never even heard of this.
Yeah, South Vacherie, Belmont, Grand Point, and doggone it.
That happens to me more often than not.
Yeah, I should be able to.
But I mean, is this these are farms you're talking about, or actual
Um,
like huge vats of land regions, like you say?
they're there are sections, and there may be multiple farmers in those
Okay,
sections. Um, the Golden Triangle is the part of St. James Parish that the tobacco grows in. Most of it is north of the river. South Vacherie is south of the river, and so Mark took tobaccos from each one of the four regions and those are normally mixed together before fermentation.
Okay.
But in this case, he made a barrel of each one of the four regions. And because of our friendship, Mark allowed me to make some blends using those tobaccos. So these are uncut. These are not the Acadian Perique. These are true St. James Periques,
From different regions, man.
but from different regions within the triangle.
And was there a very distinct difference?
Absolutely.
Oh man, that's exciting. Now, tell me this tobacco is available.
No,
Well, okay.
no, we used everything. One had a distinct smell of coffee. One had a smell of brined olives,
Jesus.
and one section had kind of a woody characteristic, and then one section, I believe it was Belmont, had the traditional plum and pepper
Wow, man.
smell. And so typically when you're smelling Perique, what you're getting is a heavily note of fermentation, which is a heavy note, sorry, of fermentation, which is basically what you smell in silage. You know, when items are aged for an extended period of time, it has that kind of funky smell. It even kind of approaches fecal matter.
I understand. Yes.
But it also has a sweetness to it, but it's more like dried fruits, like prunes. And then there's a pepperiness, but you don't get that in the aroma. You get that more in the flavor. Now, most of the Perique that's being used in commercial blends is not St. James Perique. They can only grow so much. There's about 11 acres being used. And if you get a bad crop because of floods, you get a bad crop from bugs, from mold, there would be very little Perique for that crop year.
You're talking about for the world here.
Yeah. So about 50 years ago, the owner of L.A. Poche Perique, who was a family member before Mark Ryan bought it, well before, he started doing something different. He started buying dark air cured tobaccos from other parts of the United States. And he would ferment them the same as Perique, and then he would blend the two together. And that's generally referred to as Acadian Perique.
Okay.
So the majority of what you're able to get in blends is Acadian Perique. Now, I had some blends where Mark allowed me to use St. James. I believe Sutliff is doing some limited amount of blends using St. James. But there's a big difference in cost. St. James is about twice as expensive as Acadian Perique, and Acadian Perique ain't cheap.
Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, at retail, Acadian Perique is around $40.
You're talking $40 what?
$40 US at retail if we were to sell it to you.
No, but how much of it for $40?
Oh, a pound. I'm sorry. A pound.
Oh, okay.
So St. James Perique, if we were selling it, would be $80 a pound. So that's a big difference.
Now, Russ, not to cut you off here, but I've got Mark Ryan. He's the godfather of Perique, I guess you can say right now, right?
Yeah, there are only two processors. Um, there's the Percy Martin farm, but everything they produce goes to American Spirit cigarettes. So
Okay.
the rest of the companies that use Perique in their tobaccos have to buy it from Mark.
Okay. So Mark shops within the golden triangle. You says.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now, if it's such a prized condiment, and it's funny, I'm gonna say this. Why so cheap?
Because the market wouldn't bear it.
The market wouldn't bear it.
Yeah.
Um,
The fortunate part about Perique is that you don't need to use a lot in a blend.
what would be a max amount of percentage you would use in a blend without it going overboard?
Well, one blend out on the market is about 50% Perique. And I even believe one was almost straight Perique.
Well, I mean, I've got some straight Perique, and I still haven't smoked it by itself. And for some reason, I don't know. Should I give it a try smoking it by itself, or?
Give it a shot.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I find it. I find it overwhelming in one note when you smoke it by itself. It has a wonderful synergy with other tobaccos. So by itself, it's actually kind of boring.
Okay, I get you. I get you. It's one dimensional.
Yeah, I have used as much as 25% Perique,
Okay.
but that's significant.
It's
And
significant.
yeah, and I had to use some other potent tobaccos in with it to kind of balance out the Perique.
So the nick hit is really strong, man.
Not- And that's the biggest misconception about
Okay.
Perique is that it's high in nicotine, and it's not. What it is it's alkaline. So when you add Perique to a blend, it creates an alkaline, uh, an
A pH
alkaline.
level, a high pH level.
And it creates a different environment in your mouth.
Like
And
yogurt.
yeah, and when you have an alkaline condition to the mucous membranes, they're able to absorb nicotine more easily. So even though Perique itself is not high in nicotine, it facilitates the absorption of nicotine.
Okay, and the reason why I said high nicotine is because you said you put some strong tobaccos in it. Now, strong flavored
Flavor.
tobaccos. Okay, and that does not necessarily mean high in nicotine when you say strong flavored. Is that right?
Right. Not necessarily, but in this case, it was true. I used dark fired Kentucky to balance it out. And then I used very sweet Virginia. So it all worked.
So I'm assuming
And
when you say Perique, dark fire, Kentucky, sweet Virginia, the majority would be sweet Virginia. Am I right?
yes,
Ah,
yeah,
Russ,
half of
you're
it.
amazing. You're amazing.
Half of it is sweet Virginia. And the interesting part about it is when you smoke it, there's no top dressing to speak of in this blend, but you get about a third of the way into the bowl, and you get a note of cinnamon.
Okay.
Very, very interesting.
Now, when people say here's a vapor. Now
Yep.
the Perique that's in there is not St. James. Is that right?
I
Unless
would,
it's stated.
yeah, I would say 98% of the time it's Acadian Perique.
So, if I've never had St. James Perique, could you say I've never had Perique?
No, no, I look. Just about everybody is using Acadian. So, is there a big difference between the two? There's a difference, but I don't think it's a significant difference, at least for the vast majority of pipe smokers. Most people don't have a supercritical palate. Most people can taste the blend, but they can't pick out the individual flavor elements. And for those people, I don't think they would notice a difference.
Okay, and I mean, it doesn't matter if they're enjoying the tobacco. They're enjoying the
Oh,
tobacco. Good for you. But for people who wanna develop their tastes, okay. Now, Mark Ryan, is he like a mobster? This guy, does he keep like? Is he the only guy? And anybody wants to come close, he puts them down. Is that what happens?
no, 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 not at all.
All right.
Nobody else wants to do it.
Oh, really?
I mean, this is not easy stuff. The tobacco is harvested and goes off to a building where people strip out the main vein. It's referred to as stripping. So
Right.
after you remove that woody vein, you have these two flaps. So once the vein is stripped out, it's called frog's legs
Right.
because that's what it looks like.
Right.
And then it's bundled up, put into old bourbon barrels. A loose lid is put on top. It's put under a 12 by 12 beam. They put a railroad jack on top of the lid and press it up against that beam and jack it down. And then after a few days, they remove the railroad jack and replace it with a screw jack. And then it sits for about 90 days. Cell walls burst, the fluids come out a little bit, and fermentation takes part. You can see carbon dioxide bubbles coming up through the juices. And then after about 90 days, they open up the barrel and they turn everything. So top to bottom, bottom to the top. They repeat the process and they do this for a year before the tobacco is ready. And there's a certain amount of waste because some of it turns to mush during the fermentation. So you got to contract with farmers, strip the product, put it in barrels, put it under pressure, and the whole thing takes a year. Now, LA Poche had gotten to the point where they were producing very little until Mark bought the company. And he identified the problems. First off, the farmers weren't getting paid enough. So immediately he increased the price of the crop so these people could make a living. Then he also introduced greenhouses so the farmers could come in and start their plants earlier so that when they transplanted them, they had larger, hardier plants to put in the ground so that the weather was going to have less of an effect on these plants growing. So he made a huge difference. They went from about 3 acres to 11 acres because it was now profitable. Some of those people had gone back to growing vegetables.
Yeah.
So he made it more profitable for them, increased production, and he also did some interesting experimental things like the varietal Periques from the 4 regions. He tried making Perique using Catarini Oriental. And then the experiment that he and I worked on, which I called Acadian Gold, which was using Virginia. And it turned out to be a very interesting tobacco that had a malty flavor to it.
Which we can't get anymore.
No, unfortunately. But Mark is a creative guy and he tries different things, which never was done in the past as far as Perique goes.
And it's funny that because it takes a year, and does he only have does Mark only have one batch going per year? Like if that batch is dead, the whole Perique St. James Perique world is going to be waiting for another year.
Yeah, yeah. They are, I guess, trying staggering some plantings because they do have a decently long growing season down there. But I don't know how that's going. Mark and I haven't spoken about that.
And you know what? 11 acres doesn't seem that much to me.
And considering how much can be lost, it's not. It's not a tremendous. That's why they went to bringing in the dark air cured, so that now when you blend it together, you have maybe twice as much product to sell.
And when he did the four different regions, there's a market for that. You can do specialty tobaccos, obviously, because now everybody, when I say everybody, a lot of people are doing limited quantities of tobacco, whether it's for a marketing purpose or whether there actually isn't enough material to go around. But he could have done like cognac barreled, Scotch barreled, or whatever. What I'm trying to say is the four different St. James Periques. And would they be St. James Periques?
Well, they wouldn't because as far as using different barrels, I believe it could still be called St. James Perique.
And is St. James Perique, I'm sorry, Russ, if you said this before, is it a process or is it grown in the St. James region?
It has to be grown in the Golden Triangle. You can't use any other tobaccos than Perique grown in St. James Parish. And that is a designation very much like Champagne.
Yes, yeah. And so if we think of that in those terms like Champagne or cognac, then why doesn't a producer like McBaron just buy the whole year's load worth of Perique? Like,
I don't think Mark would allow that.
Look at that. So what happens when Mark can no longer take care of that? What's going to happen with the Perique?
It depends on whether someone else wants to buy it and take it over and continue it on. If they don't,
it's over.
Pretty much.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's something to think there. And would any producers take over something like that?
Yeah, I think one of the large companies would probably step in and buy it.
I hope so. And so going back to the smell, I opened the tin. How do I know there's Perique in it?
That's difficult because most blends don't contain that much Perique. But as I said, it does have kind of a funky aroma. So,
but doesn't a dark fired Kentucky give you that funky aroma too?
No, it gives you a smoky aroma.
Okay.
It's not like cigars, yet it kind of is. That fermented smell like a cigar. It's hard to describe unless you're smelling straight Perique.
Okay.
And when you do, you'll identify with the funk.
Okay, so it's a sweet top note, right?
It's got sweetness, but it's also got this umami.
Okay.
Bottom note.
Okay. And so when you say umami, can we Can we say, is it salty? Can we say that?
There, some of it can be salty,
Okay.
but not to any great degree. It's umami like the things that I mentioned before. It's also umami like mushrooms.
Yeah. Okay.
Mushrooms are definitely umami. So
Okay.
it's that rich fifth flavor.
Right. Right. So, okay, Russ, let's get into some nepotism here. Some Russ Ouellet blends. Start from the lowest amount of percentage in a Russ Ouellet blend Perique that we can taste to your highest.
Okay, so the lowest is going to be from the Hearth and Home Signature Series. And it's not a huge amount. We would be looking at about 5% in Hearth and Home Signature Virginia Spice.
So if you would take away that 5%, that blend it would make a significant difference.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The Perique is in there is the only bottom note
I
because
see.
it's all Virginia otherwise.
Right.
So
Right. Gotcha.
without that bottom note, it just has that straight Virginia sweetness and sting to it.
Right.
But the Perique kind of levels out that sting
Okay.
and gives it depth that it wouldn't have had otherwise.
Okay. Your next one. Your next tobacco that you would suggest.
Okay, Louisiana Red.
That's available, you're talking about, right?
Yes,
Yes.
has two different types of red Virginia in it.
Okay.
One that's heavily matured and one that's normal red Virginia with about 10% Perique. And I upped the amount of Perique in that blend because red Virginia has more kick, more flavor
Okay.
than bright Virginias do. Bright Virginias are sweet, they're kind of hay-like or grass-like, where red Virginias are more like bread and toast.
Would it be tangy also?
It can be, depending on the maturity level. That's why the two are mixed together.
Okay.
The matured Virginia that's in there has that tang to it,
Okay.
and the regular Virginia is more of that bread and toast flavor.
Okay.
And then the Perique in there adds the sweetness that would otherwise not be there with the reds, which are less sweet than the brights.
Right. I got you.
But it also adds a little bit of peppery spice to the blend.
Okay.
And then we go into like the Marquis series. The Marquis series has the Prati, which I made.
Yeah. I love that blend.
Which I made for Luigi Viprati. In fact, I've got to ship out 4 tins to the Chicago show because his U.S. rep is going to be there, and he's going to carry the 4 tins back to Luigi.
Okay. Why, he can't get it in Italy?
No, we don't ship outside the U.S.
Oh, and it's only available at Pipes and Cigars.
That particular one, yeah.
Why? There's a different Viprati?
No. Oh, wait a second. No, you got it. There's no European distributor.
I got it. Okay.
Okay, I'm forgetting. You're probably dealing with. There's one particular company that does ship outside the U.S. that does buy it from us.
Right.
But as far as European distribution, I don't believe there is any.
Wow. Okay. I love that tobacco. I had a bowl of it yesterday. I'm gonna have a bowl of it later on.
It's about 15% Perique.
15, eh?
Yeah. Plus, it has a fire cured burley in it, but it's not dark fired.
Okay.
It adds a touch of sweetness to the blend, but
And
kind of a mellow, deeper sweetness.
now, what is there another tobacco in the Viprati that rounds it out? There's something that rounds it out. There's like an envelope that keeps it in there, and you bite in the envelope, and you get tanginess and you get floweriness. What's that round note?
That's just the synergy.
Really?
Yeah, Perique plays well with others. You can do a lot with Perique, and if you, for example, if you mix it with certain tobaccos, you get more of the sweetness. If you mix it with other tobaccos, you get more of the spice.
Man, it's real alchemy. It's incredible.
And so it's a real chameleon, depending on what you mix it with. And then the highest percentage I have is in the RO series with Firestorm.
And that is available?
Yeah, that's available. RO series Firestorm is 50% Virginias, the sweet Virginias that I use in anniversary cake. And then it's 25% Perique and 25% dark fired Kentucky.
Now that you wouldn't consider this to a novice pipe smoker, right?
I would avoid it because of the combination of Perique and dark fired. Dark fired is high in nicotine, and so if the Perique facilitates the absorption of nicotine and you've got another high nicotine tobacco in there, it's going to have a bit of a kick.
Okay.
I would put this on the full side of medium.
Okay.
And so that's the range from about 5% to 25% in the tobaccos that I've created. And then there's anniversary cake in the signature series, and yes, that's available, and that's about 15% per week.
And if a blend boasts 50% Perique, is that a marketing thing or is that a good thing?
It's both. It's interesting to be able to market something like that. And there is going to be a certain group of people who are really going to enjoy that. It's like my theory on tobaccos, blending tobaccos. I was at a pipe show and somebody came up to me and said, you know, people are coming up to you all day long, complimenting your work and everything else. How do you avoid getting a big head about stuff like this?
Yeah, I know where you're going with that. Yeah.
And I said, look, at the end of the day, when I've got a bunch of crumbs sitting on my workbench and I sweep it together to get rid of it, if I put that in a bag and gave it to somebody, somewhere out there, there's somebody who would smoke that and say it was the best tobacco they ever smoked. So why do you get a big head about putting a blend together and having people like it? Because people will like just about anything if you find the right person.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
So I try to blend for the tastes of the broad consumer public. I try to keep my more out there blends limited. Most of what I've blended is for mainstream pipe smokers. I do have some radical stuff. Warhorse Bar and Warhorse Green are radical.
I'm scared to try those, Russ.
And that's 90% of it is dark burley and dark fire, and only 10% of it is Virginia.
I'm scared.
And then I have to put a heavy top note on it because otherwise it would not have a very nice aroma to it. So when you're smoking it, because of the amount of top dressing, you don't notice what you're getting
God.
until about 5 minutes into a bowl, and then you go, "Oh, I better not stand up quick right now."
I mean, I want to ask you more about that tobacco,
Yeah.
but and you brought up a lot of things that I can make a show about. Your tobaccos, the tobaccos that you blend for you, the tobaccos that you blend for the general public, the tobaccos that you blend with the tobaccos available with your name on it to make it for you to say, okay, I could put my name on it. I've got no problems with this tobacco. I want to do a show like that. I mean, would that be politically incorrect to do a show like that, Russ?
Um,
I mean, look, I can ask the questions. You can say I take the fifth.
yeah, I would have no issue with that. I'm not. The thing about this business,
Now you're in a delicate position for me to be
Yeah.
asking this. Yeah.
but the thing about this business is unlike just about any other business I've been in. Most of the people in my competition, I have friends working there.
I know. It's not a big world.
No, and so
I
So-
get you.
I'm on good terms with Per Jensen from McBaron. The folks down at Sutliff produce my tobacco. I've got good friends down there. Jeremy Reeves from Cornell and Deal. He and I have worked together before. So I have friends in all of these places. I would never knock anybody else's
I
work.
understand. It's like the
Nope.
jazz world, man. It's like
Yeah.
the jazz world.
Yeah, no, I would never knock anybody else's work.
And there's no reason to knock anybody else's work
no,
at all.
no, and what they produce is unique. What I produce is unique.
Yep.
And there's enough room in the business for all of us.
Yep.
So, it's much more comfortable going to a pipe show because you're gonna run into friends.
Mm-hmm.
You're not running into your competition.
I understand. Yeah. Or
You know.
rivals.
Yeah,
This competition is good. Competition is great.
competition is what creates variety.
Absolutely. Anyways,
So-
Russ, look, I'm gonna cut it short. I could take this on for a million years. I love talking to you, man. I learned so much. Russ, thanks a lot. And I'm gonna put up the ending credits. So stick around.
Okay.